Western leaders discuss ramping up more weapons for Ukraine, while Kyiv cracks down on corruption.
Serbia's president says his country would become a European pariah if they don't accept a Western-backed deal to normalise relations with Kosovo.
China has denied that a balloon being tracked by the Pentagon above the US is a spy device collecting data.
The few remaining residents of the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut are struggling to survive in the mists of the war. The front lines have not moved much in recent weeks, and Kyiv is hoping that new weapons promised by the West will tip the balance in its favour. On the Kherson front, Ukrainian soldiers train while searching for a new way to cross the Dnipro River without suffering excessive casualties. The newly elected Czech president, a former NATO general, is calling on Ukraine allies to do more. And now the question of sending fighter jets has entered the debate.
It's easy to sort of get carried away in, last week we gave tanks and what next can we promise? There are things to promise next, and I've said in the Chamber of the House of Commons, I'm very open to examining all sorts of systems and not just jets to give Ukraine that assistance. But these things don't always happen overnight.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian authorities are cracking down on corruption within agencies managing funds intended to assist victims of war. In Odessa, several officials have been arrested for defrauding the state of nearly €175,000. Kyiv knows it needs to reassure donors that the money they give is going to the intended recipients.
A highly symbolic visit, showing off Europe's commitment to Ukraine. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, in Kiev, once again, meeting the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. But this time, she's not alone. No less than 15 European commissioners have joined her for various meetings with the Ukrainian government. All this despite the fact that the country's still at war, meaning this gathering and these pictures will go down in history. But beyond the symbolism, President Zelensky wants the European Union to introduce more sanctions against Russia, as he thinks they're, quote, slowing down.
We will introduce, with our G7 partners, an additional price cap on Russian petroleum products. And by the 24th of February, exactly 1 year since the invasion started, we aim to have the 10th package of sanctions in place.
Also on the table, how to promote the integration of Ukraine into the EU. But Kiev's hope for quick membership was frustrated, as there's no agreements between member states for a fast-track procedure. They say more work must be done. Ukraine says it will continue fighting against corruption. While EU commissioners were meeting with Ukrainian ministers, the EU Foreign Affairs Chief, Joseph Borrell, was with the Prime Minister, promising to double the number of Ukrainian soldiers to be trained, as well as campaigning to disactivate mines. On Friday, the visit continues with an EU-Ukraine summit. Our Sasha Vacalini has more.
Ukrainian authorities insisted that the EU-Ukraine summit should take place here in Kyiv and not in Brussels. They wanted the delegation of senior EU officials to see how the country is operating, how they're introducing measures and requirements, whilst at the same time defending itself for almost 1 year now, something that Kyiv certainly believes deserves the EU membership. Sasha Vakulina, Euronews, Kyiv.
Kosovo has signalled that it's willing to create an association of 5 Serb-majority municipalities in the north of the country in order to unblock talks with Belgrade. Critics say it could give Serbia a permanent hand in Kosovo's politics, but it's a key part of a 2013 deal to eventually normalise relations between the two countries. Serbia's president, Aleksandar Vučić, has urged lawmakers in Belgrade to accept the diplomatic moves.
Would we become a European pariah? Yes, we would. Completely isolated. No one would talk to us. We would not have any access to funds. You cannot function in the modern world alone.
Ne možete da funkcionišete u savremenom svetu sami.
However, Serbian nationalists consider any move towards the recognition of Kosovo's independence unacceptable and have made their anger known to Vučić in parliament. Several dozen people also demonstrated in Belgrade against any political understanding being struck with Pristina.
Grim times for big tech. Apple has just reported a 5% drop in sales for the final months of 2022. The company's first quarterly decline in almost 4 years reflects the impact of COVID restrictions in Chinese factories. It coincides with disappointing results for the same period for Google. Parent company Alphabet's profit of $13.6 billion, or 12.4 billion euros, was below its earnings for the same period last year. There was better news for Amazon, with its revenues exceeding expectations. But the online retail platform has already announced thousands of job cuts and has given a cautious sales forecast for the current quarter. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has denied that a balloon spotted in US airspace is collecting sensitive information. Instead, they claimed it is a civilian airship collecting meteorological data and that it had accidentally strayed. It's recently been spotted over western states and forced a brief precautionary closure of an airport in the city of Billings, Montana. US defense officials say they're tracking the object but don't plan to shoot it down to avoid injuring people on the ground. China has launched a number of satellites which Washington believes are intended to spy on the US. However, analysts say the balloon is unlikely to provide any additional benefit to Chinese intelligence gathering. But the incident does further raise tensions between the two countries ahead of a reported visit by Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Beijing this weekend. The trip following on from his Middle East tour has not been formally announced. However, it is said to be aimed at finding common ground amid a host of long-standing diplomatic conflicts.
Reduce tensions.